Hello and welcome to the finals of the Lumia Legacy Low Power Format VGC Open Tournament. Really a mouthful to say, I must admit. But this is the finals between Pasta Sauce and Davian, also known as Blazin Bandit, or just Blazin. Now, they both have very unique teams. I have Pasta's team just down here with the Infernix, Billiforge, Terrafly, Oxydrake, Lashent, Wintrix, and Plasmoth. It is mostly a Heatwave team, so he's just making sure that he has, everything all good and done. And then I don't actually have Davian's team here, but we already know his gimmick that he chose. He had the gimmick of unique Lumians that weren't chosen anywhere else. So he has the Sea Drake, Banfino, Gandervale, Scampy, Zulon, Kryptana, and Mewtune. I will be the caster for today, and I apologize if my commentary is a bit lackluster this time around. I do have a bit of a headache in the current moment. However, that is beyond the point. We have a match to cast. I've talked with Pasta Sauce and Davian. They both have some strategies going into this. Davian has a bit of a calc sheet going on, while Pasta just has a normal strategy going into this. And we actually see Pasta leading off with the Wintrix and the Billiforge, as Davian leads off with the Mewtune and the Kryptana. Now, of course, Mewtune dropping the defenses of the Billiforge and the Wintrix, making his Kryptana's attacks do so much more damage. But of course, Preemptive Strike is on the field and is the only priority that is currently in play outside of Dodge, of course. So, and this Billiforge is always threatening, especially to this Kryptana. Both of its stab moves are super effective with the Flare Blast and the Muck Blast. But, however, Davian here with the Mewtune and the Kryptana, Kryptana's easily able to do a lot of damage with the Power Claw Wave Shell, which should be able to deal a lot of damage, if not OHKO this Billiforge outright, depending on his set and TPs. If it is a tender set for whatever reason, maybe it is very smart, tender, sluggish or whatever, although I don't know why you'd be just frail sluggish if you're not running any melee attack. Beyond the point though, Kryptana I believe is the fastest thing on this field right now, due to Wintrix not having any glide buffs yet. Therefore, Preemptive Strike is of course all-powerful. Preemptive Strike can break the Martial Pearl that is currently on Mewtune, which can set up for a potential Terrafly Rough Up later. Therefore, the Martial Pearl not being there, of course, meaning that Rough Up will be doing the double damage that it is supposed to. Billiforge, I've already talked about how Billiforge is incredibly threatening to this Kryptana, but also this Mewtune. Mewtune does not have very top-tier defenses. Therefore, the Billiforge, maybe a Flare Blast, maybe a Muck Blast going into this Mewtune will deal a lot of damage either way. Oh, ooh, they glitched. Yeah, Pasta glitched. I was wondering why it was going on for so long. Okay, Pasta Sauce is coming back in. Well, I guess there's no DC rule in play because nothing even happened. Oh wait, lobby's bugged. I can already tell this is going to be an entertaining final purely off of that.
Okay, here we go again. This should not take nearly as much time as it did last time due to nobody being bugged, hopefully. I hate headaches. Headaches are easily the worst type of ache for you to have, especially if it's like a migraine or anything. They just go away so slowly. And they're like constantly like needles in your brain. It's annoying. Why don't we call it a brain ache instead of a headache? Like, okay, well, either way, here we go again with Pasta Sauce and Davian. Same leads, of course, from the both of them. This shouldn't take too long if they've had a lot of time to think about what their first move is going to be. I know it was such a daring endeavor to think about what they had to do for this. Okay, Cryptana dodges. Wintrix's Preemptive Strike goes into the Cryptana with the dodge, Raging Howl from the Mewtwo going into the Billforge, putting them into red HP. As Billforge uses Flare Blast, Cryptana does dodge the move. This is an extremely good turn for Davian, actually. As now, Cryptana is in a real position of power against this Wintrix, and of course Mewtwo can quickly kill this Billforge. And Wintrix does not outspeed Cryptana. So this Cryptana can obviously kill Wintrix with a Razor Slash being boosted by the Stab and also the Power Claw ability boosting all slashing moves by 50%. And then Mewtwo, we just saw how much that Raging Howl can do to the Billforge, and there's going to be no Lashent to be able to come in to tank it. But the Wintrix does swap out into said Infernix. As Billforge does just use Dodge, Razor Slash going into the Infernix, not quite picking up a KO, and the Raging Howl being dodged by the Billforge. But now a gamble thrown this Mewtwo is very strong, and I'm unsure if this Mewtwo will die to a double of a Flare, double Flare Blast or Flare Blast and Muck Blast. Like, and even if they do, this Cryptana is obviously in a position of power. Neither of these Lumions have a spread move that'll be able to pick up a KO onto both of the Lumions. And of course, both of Davian's Lumions have dodge, being able to stall out a turn of the Heat Wave. But Pasta Sauce does just swap out the Billforge into the Lashent, dropping down the ranged attack of all of the Lumions on the field. Cryptana does just use dodge. And Infernix Flare Blast going into the Mewtwo, putting it into red HP, but not quite ripe enough for a KO. And the Gamma Pulse will pick up a KO onto this Infernix. And now the Water Resist is out on the field right now, so there is just a Wave Shell boosted Wave, or Wave Shell boosted Hydro Slash that can go into this Billforge, and not much can tank for it, as the only thing that can swap in to tank it is the Wintrix, otherwise this Billforge is just straight up dead. Obviously, Mewtwo might just be able to sacrifice itself with a potential Raging Howl into this Lashant, dealing pretty good damage even for a -1 Mewtwo, as all things. And then Cortana, of course, Hydro Slash into this Villforge will be dealing an insane amount of damage. Especially with the Wave Shield booster on top of it. It's going to take a heck of a game from Pastasauce to be able to come back from this game 1. As Davian still has all 4 of his Lumions. Meanwhile, Pastasauce, while having 3, has one extremely damaged Villforge that will die to any move from either of these Lumions currently. Now, of course, this Villforge does have dodge, so it might be able to stall out a turn of potential energy stalling. However, that dodge will not protect this Lashant, who, while it also has Briar Block protecting itself from any oncoming attacks, which will be dealing chip damage to the Cortana if the Cortana does for some reason decide to attack said Lashant. But instead, Mewtwo actually decides to swap back into the Zulong. The Lashant does go for a Briar Block, but see about the Villforge. Villforge does just use dodge, the double dodge, or rather duo dodge, I suppose, from Pastasauce. But now there is a Zulong in who's living in Pastasauce's, like, diving into a 5-course meal, essentially. There is no ranged attack drop onto the Zulong that would have been coming from this Lashant's petrifying. Therefore, this Villforge is still looking in trouble as there is nothing protecting it except for another dodge, which will be a genuine issue for Pasta here. As I don't think any amount of RNG is going to be able to bring them back into this game, facing a Zulong, a Cortana, a Mewtwo, and a Mystery Lumion in the back. Whether the Mystery Lumion could be the Banfino, maybe a Seadrake, literally anything could be in the back, I believe. The Elemental Burst going into this Wintrix as Hydro Slash Wave Shell boosted, of course, and Power Claw boosted will be picking up a KO onto this Villforge. This Zulong will still be the, pardon me. This Zulong will still be the fastest thing on this field due to there being no glide boosts on this Wintrix. And even with the Petrifying drop, this Wintrix is still incredibly vulnerable. However, once again, Preemptive Strike is on the field from this Wintrix, being able to go Preemptive Strike onto either Cortana or Zulong. However, I do believe Davian can put Pasta in a bit of a pin in terms of killing Wintrix, as I believe the final Lumions might just be able to clean up on the Lashant due to there being no spread damage currently on the field, except for Zulong's Typhoon, of course. But that Zulong Typhoon would be giving a Wintrix a speed boost. Cortana is always still ever threatening, with Razor Slash going into the Wintrix, maybe Razor Slash going into the Lashant. Wintrix does just use Preemptive Strike onto the Zulong. Zulong flinched and couldn't move. Razor Slash going onto the Wintrix, picking up the KO, as Zulong will flinch here. But it's actually slower than Lashant. Or I'm crazy. Never mind. Correct me. I'm crazy, I just did not see the Zulong move. Whoopsie daisies, my bad. Lashant uses Briar Block, trying to stall it just as many turns as possible, maybe thinking about Pasta's game 2, whatever their game 2 strategy is. Now, this Cortana is out of energy, but I don't think that'll actually stop much coming from this Cortana, or coming from Davian's side, as Cortana can just be sacked. Cortana is waiting out this turn. Zulong is Elemental Bursting. This Lashant is at around 2 HP. Slap down, not quite picking up a KO onto this Cortana. Now, if I'm Davian, you have to wonder about the Briar Block, but there is no Briar Block. This is just a forfeit coming from Pastasauce. And we are moving on to a Game 2. Bang. Game 2 battle.
Now, I'm interested in what adjustments may be coming from either Davian or Pasta here. The Wintrix didn't really do much, or not the Wintrix, pardon me, the Infernix, both ending with X. But the Infernix didn't actually do much for Pasta here, so I'm wondering if he'll swap it out for maybe the Terrafly, as Terrafly is still incredibly threatening into the team with the Hotfoot Specialty Club's boost, having that immediate burst damage. We might also see the Plasmoth come out. Plasmoth, obviously, one of the best Lumions in the game. With incredible disruption, such as Preemptive Strike, Provoke, Pivot with Zip Zap. But I believe, Pasta's set is Thunder Blast, Fire Blast, Preemptive Strike, and Provoke. With the Thunder Summon, which seems counterintuitive, to be honest. Considering that it is a Heatwave team, and they're running Thunder Summon. We see no changes from Davian's side, but we do see a change in the lead from Pasta's side. We see, instead of Wintrix and Villafors, we see Wintrix and Infernix, both of the X's coming out into the field from Pasta's side, threatening immediate damage with the use of Flare Blast from the Infernix. However, it is not 100% accurate nor boosted by the Heat Wave. Therefore, it will not be doing as much damage as it would beforehand. However, due to the fact that Kryptonic is quite incredibly frail, I don't think that will be much of an issue. Wintrix, of course, offering many types of support. There's obviously the Jetstream, the Baffle, the Preemptive Strike, which I believe would be coming out this turn. We might actually see Preemptive Strike and a Magnify. However, you do have to be careful about this Mewtwo's Gamma Pulse, which will be doing super effective damage onto this Wintrix, or onto this Infernix, not the Wintrix. However, it will still be doing a pretty decent amount of damage onto this Wintrix. Therefore, if anything, you might want to Preemptive Strike this Mewtwo. But we actually just see the swap coming from Pasta, going into the Shent from the Wintrix. I'm not going to mess it up this time. With the minus range attack, Kryptana uses Dodge, Kryptana being the fastest thing. If anything else uses Dodge, Infernix uses Dodge, proving that it is slower than the Kryptana without the Heat Wave. And then Gamma Pulse, obviously not affecting the Lashent and Infernix dodging, therefore Gamma Pulse does nothing. No damage was dealt this turn, but energy was wasted. However, it was not a lot of energy, considering the low energy cost of all of the moves used. But every little ounce of energy matters in a game like Doubles. While games are fast, they have times where they are not fast enough, and you do need to wait or rest. So this is still a bit of a dicey situation for Davian and Pasta here. We see the Mewtwo swap coming from Davian going into the Gunner Veil with the Wind Globe, boosting the toxic damage on the field, and then Razor Slash from the Kryptana going into the Infernix, picking up a one-hit knockout. Slapdown coming from the Shent into the Gander Veil, dealing about 35% HP, I'm actually unsure. And then the Wintrix coming out. Wintrix is actually, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 speed point faster than the Gander Veil, therefore it does have the fastest Preemptive Strike on the field. Which could be very bad. Actually, that could be very bad for Davian here, as if you Preemptive Strike the Gander Veil, then Lashent does just get 3 damage onto this Kryptana. But if you Preemptive Strike this Kryptana, what does Gander Veil do back? I mean, it can enamor the Lashent harshly, or sharply, or harshly, I don't remember the terminology. I think it's harshly lowering its melee attack.
And then, of course, Brain Freeze is always in play from this Wintrix going into the Gander Veil, dealing super effective damage, which will most definitely be picking up a one-hit knockout. But we do see the Lashent swapping into Bellaforge, removing the wind boost of speed. Gander Veil uses Preemptive Strike, proving there is no Preemptive Strike from this Wintrix. And the Burglar coming from the Gander Veil steals the Health Amulet, but it's actually not max speed on the Wintrix. I was incorrect. It's not max speed Wintrix coming from Pastissage, meaning that it has the slower Preemptive Strike, or they are just speed tied. That is a possibility. But considering their speed stats, I don't think that this is a speed tie. This means that Gander Veil is in fact faster than this Wintrix. And that can potentially get some crucial damage before the potential Brain Freeze coming off of Wintrix going onto the Gander Veil. Which, any damage is good damage in a game like Doubles, where every piece of chip is so important to the end game facility. Davian seems to be in a very powerful position with the Wave Shell Hydro Slash we were seeing in the previous game being extremely threatening onto the Bellaforge, even with the 30% damage reduction from the Heat Wave that is surrounding the battlefield. And a potential Wing Slap, I believe, is the move from Gander Veil, but actually we see them swapping Gander Veil out for Mewtwo, dropping the melee defensive Bellaforge. But Cortana does just use Dodge, unfortunately, as Wintrix uses Brain Freeze onto the Mewtwo, and Bellaforge uses Flare Blast. Cortana does just dodge the move. Now, we do know that Cortana is the fastest thing on the field right now, and it can pick up a KO onto either Lumion that it wants, with the potential exception from Bellaforge. However, with the help of Mewtwo, with a potential Gamma Pulse, it will most definitely be able to pick up a KO no matter what. Considering the -1 melee defense of the Bellaforge, this Wave Shell boosted Hydro Slash with the boost of Power Claw along with it, bringing 50% times 50%, or 1.5 times 1.5 times something? I don't know. I can't do math right now. I have a headache. However, beyond the point, even with the Heat Wave reduction, this is still going to be doing a massive amount of damage to this Bellaforge, and the only way anything is being saved for it is if the Bellaforge shoots the dodge. Now, Davian can either read this and throw a Razor Slash into this Wintrix, or he can continue and just Hydro Slash anyways. He has the energy to sustain it, and he does not die to a Jet Stream from Wintrix. However, with the Jet Stream from Wintrix, Wintrix will get a Glide Boost, meaning that it will be able to outspeed it on the next turn with a potential Baffle. However, ignore everything that I just said, as Wintrix does just swap out into the Lashent, lowering the range attack of Mewtwo, and most importantly, as Cortana also swap out into Gander Veil. And Gamma Pulse will just be doing a little bit of chip onto this Bellaforge, as Lashent is immune. Flare Blast going into the Gander Veil, making sure that the Gander Veil is getting sacrificed. And now Cortana is being sent back in from Davian with a fresh paint of something. I don't know what I'm saying anymore, to be honest. I think they're trying to predict a dodge coming from a dodge and maybe a Jet Stream. However, now this Bellaforge has dodge in place still, and you are in the exact same situation as before, where this, except potentially even worse, as this Lashent can slap down Cortana, removing the Wave Shell. Removing the Wave Shell, meaning that there is no 50% Wave Shell boost. Meaning that there is no insane amount of damage coming from this Cortana onto this -1 defense Bellaforge. Jesus, that is a mouthful to say. You think the theater kid can actually talk a lot, but no, I cannot talk a lot. Mewtwo, of course, even with the -1 range attack, can still offer an intense amount of damage. meaning that nothing is currently safe from the wrath of Mewtwo and Grimtana. Ignore everything I just said again. Mewtwo is swapping out into the Zulong as the Lashent Briar blocks. And then as Billaforge dodges, meaning that energy is going to be wasted from this Grimtana. As Hydro Touch does just go into this Billaforge. Now, I believe you can just pin this Billaforge, making it so that it's forced to either double dodge or sacrifice Wind Tricks, with a potential Hydro Slash and Wave Shell going into this Billaforge, Hydro Slash, Wave Shell going into this Billaforge, and a Thunder Strike from the Sulong into this Billaforge. Thunder Strike, of course, will be punching the Wind Trick swap, as we do see that is happening. Wind Trick does swap in as Zulong actually Elemental Burst, but instead of the Wind Trick slot, it's the Lashent slot. And Hydro Slash with the Wave Shell boost, with the Power Claw boost, only does like 50%. Slapdown coming from the Lashent onto the Zulong does almost 50% of its HP, just under, I'd say, maybe about 45%. But most importantly, it slaps the Specialty Goggles off. And now neither of the Lumions on Davian's side of the field has an item. Razor Slash is free into the Wind Tricks, of course it is. But then again, Wind Tricks has Preemptive Strike on the table. We cannot forget that no matter what. But there's no safe option to Preemptive Strike. You might just want to get the heck out of there, as it might be your only saving hope. It's in moments like these where you'd really wish you were Scorching Skin Billaforge to burn this Grimtana. However, Heat Wave was kind of important on this team, wasn't it? Lashent swaps out into the Billaforge. Wind Tricks does use Preemptive Strike onto the Grimtana, and Zulong uses Elemental Burst onto the onto the Wind Tricks. And now we're back in the same situation. Except there's no defense drop on Billaforge, there's no Wave Shell on the Grimtana, therefore it's actually not the same situation at all. I don't know if Davian realized he could swap moves there. I don't know why he didn't Thunder Strike and instead Elemental Bursted, but it's beyond my knowledge on why Davian would do that. As Thunder Strike would have picked up the kill onto this Wind Tricks. But now this Wind Tricks is still alive, still thriving, and this Billaforge is on field. Maybe it would have been better if the Wind Tricks did die. Maybe this is all calculated. I doubt it. But if the Wind Tricks did die, then Lashent would have been able to get in, dropping the range attack of this Zulong, who already has a range attack drop because of this Specialty Goggles being knocked off. Or, pardon me, slapped down. Now, this Billaforge is always threatening to this Grimtana. It should always be threatening to this Zulong. A Muck Blast is incredibly powerful. Though we do just see Wind Trick swapping into the Lashent, dropping the range attack of Grimtana and Zulong. Grimtana does just use dodge, of course. Zulong zip zaps into the Lashent. That's why he didn't Thunder Strike. He zip zap. Oh. I understand it now. Now, the defense drop is coming back into play, of course, but the Muck Blast going into the Mewtwo, not quite picking up any damage. Lance being impatient as usual, wanting to know who's winning or who won. Lashent does just use a quick and easy Briar Block, protecting itself for the turn. Hydro Slash going onto the Billaforge, not picking up a KO without that Wave Shell. Raging Howl going into the Lashent, but Lashent is protected by its Briar Block, and Flare Blast will be picking up a KO onto this Grimtana, but Billaforge is now out of energy. The heat is still intense, and now Zulong gets to swap back in for Davian's side.
It is Zulong and Mewtwo against the world, I believe, unless there's another Lumion in the back. I have honestly lost count. Now, this is actually quite interesting. There is no range attack drop on either of these Lumions right now. Unless there is, correct me if not. But I believe... No, there isn't. This Wintrix does just get sacrificed, as Billforge does just use Dodge. Its only move that it can use. Elemental Burst, picking up a KO onto the Wintrix, and Raging Howl, energy being wasted. And funnily enough, I'm not sure if it'll matter, but Passasus does just get to use a priority flail for the hell of it. Wait, Lashent, my apologies. Lashent does just get to come back in, dropping the range attack of both Zulong and Mewtwo. However, with a potential 4th Lumion in the back, I lost count. That's why I say potential. I'm not sure if either of those really matter in the long run, especially with everything being so chipped, it gets kind of tricky. Priority dodge, I think, is on the table, unless that is actually enough energy for a true dodge. The priority dodge is funny, so I hope it's priority flail. Not priority dodge, of course priority dodge. Zulong does wait out this turn, actually. As Billforge also waits out this turn, there is no priority dodge. As Lashent uses Slapdown onto the Zulong, bringing it down to red HP, Raging Howl going onto the Billforge, picking up a KO. As Lashent is back in a bit of a pickle, and I believe that was beat. There is no more swaps for past this side. It is Lashent against the world, minus Kryptana. And essentially minus Mewtwo. This Mewtwo's kind of out of commission right now. Zulong Elemental Burst will be picking up the final... will not be picking up the final KO onto this Lashent. My apologies, I'm spreading misinformation. Dang, Lashent is bulky. He used to play singles, you think I'd know that? But yeah, I guess now we get to see if Davian has a second or another Lumion in the back. Oh. Wait, was that the... What the hell just... Okay, 1-1. GG, well played. I did not realize that Lashent was faster than the Mewtwo. Okay. Wow. Oh god, I have to do another round of commentary. Lord. Note to self, next time I do this, bring water. I forgot to bring water for some reason. You'd think I'd be smarter than that, but I'm not. It's like none of this commentary picks up for some reason. I'm gonna crash out. Passasus leading off with the Billforge and the Infernix, the immediate Heat Wave boost. Heat Wave Hot Foot boost from the Infernix, and the Mewtwo and Kryptana. The good old lead from Davian. Now, this Infernix is always threatening a KO onto Kryptana. Never has it not.
Yada yada, we've all heard this before.
I believe you had the situation before. I think we had the situation in game 1.
Also, I'll just explain what happened the previous turn to anybody who might be confused, or the previous game. Due to Lashent outspeeding the Mutoon and killing it with Timber Thrash, even though it did die itself, Mutoon had died first. Therefore, we have to give the win to Pasta. Due to the fact that Mutoon had died first and Lashent died second, meaning that Pasta does technically get the win, and there are no ties. Villafort is a swap out from Pasta's side, going into the Lashent, but trying to waste a potential Wave Shell, dropping the range attack of both of the Lumians.
Okay, I must admit, I'm kind of shocked.
There's no dodge from Cortana, actually, but instead there is a Razor Slash going into the Infernix, picking up a one-hit KO after Infernix Flare Blast and gets a burn onto the Mutoon. But Villafort does just get to come back in. Villafort is obviously incredibly threatening now, as Mutoon is almost a non-issue for it with that -1 range attack. And of course, threatening one-hit KOs across the board against this Cortana. On Davian's side, we do just see Mutoon swap out into the Zulon, as Cortana does just use a dodge. Lashent uses a Timber Thrash into the Zulon slot, dealing about 35% HP, even though it is a not very effective hit. And the Flare Blast coming from the Villafort. I'm surprised Pasta didn't go for a little bit of middle ground play with the Muck Blast, considering that Timber Thrash probably would have picked up a kill onto the Mutoon. And while Muck Blast I don't think would have picked up the KO onto the Zulong, what will pick up KO with this Villafort is a Muck Blast or Flare Blast going into this Cortana. But we do just see Zulong swapping out going into the Mutoon. Mutoon obviously burnt, however this is -1 range defense. -1 defense Villafort, and the Hydro Slash, the infamous Hydro Slash, will be picking up a one-hit KO. We saw how much damage it had done before. That is most definitely going to pick up a one-hit KO with the Wave Shell on top of it. There is no ifs, ands, or buts without any melee attack drops or anything. That will be a one-hit KO. Unless I'm delusional. That is the one if. If I'm delusional, then it will not. But we do just see Mutoon swapping out into Scampy, as we do see the Hydro Slash with the Wave Shell boost, picking up not a one-hit KO. I am, in fact, delusional. Do not worry. Slapdown coming from the Lashent onto the Scampy. Oh, Lord. Oh, wow. This game 3, man. Slapdown going onto the Stampede, getting rid of its drop of youth. This is going to make Body Crash and Battering Ram do so much less damage without that boost. Now, of course, Zulong is here, but will that matter in the long run? Of course, Battering Ram is still going to be 2 times effective with the Web Pearl coming on the, with the Web Pearl on the Lashent.
Lachenne just decides to go for a Briar Block, actually. Stampy, Battering Ram, going into the Briar Block. Stampy is taking a little bit of chip due to said Briar Block. Zulong Elemental Burst going into the Billaforge, picking up a KO. As the Heat Wave ends. What is the last Lumion? The last Lumion is Wintrix. There has been no swaps the entire time, just a swap of leaves. I know this Wintrix is also incredibly threatening into the team right now. Zulong and Mewtwo do not want to be tanking anything. And Wintrix can offer a preemptive strike, which can do a lot in the long run, actually. I don't think you can really comprehend how much that would be able to do in the grand scheme of things. But keep in mind, it is still currently 3-2 in the favor of Davian. Even if everything is chipped, even if everything is slapped, that does not change the fact that it is currently 3-2. If Davian can just trade his way out of this, I believe that it will end up fantastic for him. Because he will obviously have that one last Lumion in the back. So if he can, like, sacrifice Zulong and Stampy for this Lachenne and Wintrix, that will be an amazing trade. But no, Zulong does just swap into the Mewtwo. Mewtwo obviously burnt. But with the melee defense drop, Preemptive Strike does go onto the Stampy. As Lachenne slap down going onto the Mewtwo, not quite picking up a KO, slapping down its Martial Pearl. And the burn just leaving out in a sliver of HP. Davian is still in the game. But, ironically enough, I think this Mewtwo is the slowest thing on the field. I think, unless it's like speed tied with Lachenne or whatever, just that game 2 end. I do firmly believe that it is slower unless there was a speed raise or drop that I wasn't aware of. So I do believe that this is still incredibly possible for Pasta. I think if anything, Pasta just needs to keep Lachenne alive and healthy. I'm intrigued. Hey, I said it from the start, this is going to be a good game. This was going to be a good final. This seems to be going for a good final, my brother. If only it was dodge on this Wintrix, you'd be able to just stall out a turn, wasting energy on the Stampy, and killing the Mewtwo with a burn. We do see a Lachenne Briar Block. Lachenne is now almost out of energy. Battering Ram going into the Lachenne. Jetstream going into the Stampy. Wintrix Glide. This will make it faster than the Zulong. And then Lachenne was saved by its Briar Block. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this Lachenne is not outspeeding Zulong. This Wintrix should be outspeeding Zulong. It is 94 base speed versus 119 base speed, but with the +1 speed boost, I believe it might outrun. And Wintrix goes for the Brain Freeze, picking up a KO. 2-1, Pasta win. Good game, and well played.